Hello boys and girls, this is Mr. So. Welcome back for another lesson of biology. Today we are going through lesson 49 of chapter 30, the mechanism of evolution. Before you start watching the video, remember to like and subscribe my channel and also share the video to your classmates. Let's start. There are two different mechanisms of evolution proposed by two different scientists. The first one is the Lamarck theory by Lamarck. It's called the Lamarckism. The second one is the Darwin's theory, called the Darwinism, proposed by Darwin. Let's take a look at the Lamarckism first. Lamarckism is proposed in the year 1809 by the scientist Lamarck. Lamarck proposed that in the old times, the ancestor of all giraffes, they are short-necked. However, they would like to get the leaves on top of the tree. In order to do so, they try to stretch the neck to reach for the higher position of the tree. The more they stretch, the longer the neck becomes. Therefore, day by day, year by year, the short-necked giraffe become the long-necked giraffe nowadays. Lamarck suggested that it is the environmental change that creates the needs. In the environment of the giraffe, the trees they are very tall. The leaves they are up in the sky. In order for the giraffe to eat those leaves, the organisms, the giraffe, they have to modify their existing structure. That means they have to stretch the neck longer and longer in order to eat the leaves up in the air. Lamarck suggested that for the existing structure, if you use it very frequently and repeatedly, the structure will be well developed, such as when you stretch your neck more, your neck will be longer in the case of giraffe. On the other hand, if the existing structure is not used very frequently, it will degenerate, such as in the case of human hair. Compared with other mammals such as the monkey, the human hair is not very useful in keeping us warm because we know how to wear clothes to keep us warm. Therefore, the hair in human, they are usually degenerate. The amount is less than those in the monkey. Lamarckism also suggested that the acquired character, 後天獲得嘅特徵, it can be passed on to the next generation. That means, if you stretch your neck very often and you turn yourself from a short-necked giraffe to a long-necked giraffe, after you become the long-necked giraffe, the next generation, the child that you give birth to, it will also be a long-necked giraffe baby. However, the idea of passing on the acquired character to the next generation is immediately banned by another scientist. So another scientist, August Weismann, he did an experiment to test for Lamarck's idea. What he did is he cuts away the tail of two rats and then allowed them to mate and reproduce. Afterwards, all the offspring, they still got the tail. That means your acquired character, 後天獲得嘅特徵, it cannot pass on to the next generation. So since the acquired character cannot be passed on to the next generation, this disproved Lamarckism. Later on in the year 1858, Charles Darwin proposed another evolutionary theory that is called the natural selection. Darwin's idea comes from a visit to the Galapagos Island, which is right next to the South America, in his 5 years voyage. He found that the finches on that island is very similar to those on the mainland, on those in the South America mainland. Although they all look very similar, the beaks of all the finches, they are slightly different, because they adapt to different food sources. So based on the size or the length, they eat different types of food as follow. So Darwin suggested that all of them, they have certain type of similarity, but their difference is due to the different food source. They must be originated from a single species on the mainland of South America. In the 5 years of traveling the voyage of Darwin, he found the following, that no matter in the Galapagos Island or in the South America, the animals, the offspring population, they are rather stable. Why would the offspring population be rather stable? Let's take a look at this picture. There are many penguins living in a particular island. What problems do they have? There are so many of them. So some of them, they might die. Why? Why some of them survived and why some of them died? The reason for a stable offspring population is because these offspring, they tend to have competition with each other for a limited amount of resources, such as the space or the food. And some of them, if they are very weak in the competition, they lose and then they died. We call this struggle for existence. 生存競爭, they always have competition. The second thing Darwin observed is, for all the organisms of the same species, they have variation. They must have some differences. At the beginning of the world, there are already two types of giraffe. The short-necked giraffe and the long-necked giraffe. There are variations between the neck length. However, only the long-necked giraffe, they can survive and reproduce because they can eat the food on top of the tree. They survive and reproduce. But for the short-necked giraffe, they do not get the food source, therefore they die. There is variation of the same species. Therefore, for the organisms who have the favorable character, they are better adapted to the environment and survive. Such as the long-necked giraffe, they can reach for the leaves on the top of the tree, they can better survive. They have a higher chance of survival and reproduce better. This allows the continuity of their generation. We call this the survival of the fittest, 适者生存. Fittest, that means they are fit at surviving and reproducing, continuing their generation. Darwin observed that the organisms with favorable character can pass on the character to the next generation. After generation and generation, the accumulation of favorable character can cause a different looks from the ancestor. This is what we call evolution. When we talk about natural selection from Darwin, we have to focus on the selection pressure. This time, in the case of a giraffe, the selection pressure is the food on top of the tree. It is the food which selects which organisms to survive, which organisms to die. Is it the long neck or short neck giraffe to survive or die? This time, it is the long-necked giraffe to survive. Since they survive, we call that they are being selected for. However, on the other hand, the short-necked giraffe, they died. They are being eliminated and killed. So therefore, the short-necked giraffe, they are being selected against. The long-necked giraffe, they have a favorable character. They can reach to the top of the tree and eat the leaves there. Therefore, they are better surviving and reproducing and pass on these favorable character to their offspring. After many generations, the proportion of the long-necked giraffe increases in the population. With more and more accumulation of a favorable character, it becomes so different from the ancestor. We call this evolution. Let's take a look at a few MCQs before we end this lesson. Which of the following observation is not related to the process of evolution? Give you 10 seconds to think. So among A, B, C, D, A is not related to the process of evolution because it says that some variations are not inheritable. This is wrong. Because from Darwin says that the variation, they can be inherited. They can be passed on to the next generation. So A is wrong. It is not related to the process of evolution. Let's take a look at the other options. B, organisms, they compete for resources to survive. Yes, this is correct. Because Darwin suggested that the organisms, they struggle for existence. They compete. They have competition. C, environmental change gives stress to the organisms. Exactly. The environment, they act as a selective pressure. So in order to give stress to the organisms and do the selection. And then the last one, D, variation exists among different individuals of the same species. Yes, this is proposed by Darwin. So B, C, D, they are correct. A is wrong. All right, let's take a look at the next MCQ. Which of the following statement is not involved in the concepts of evolution by natural selection? Not about the idea from Darwin. Give you 10 seconds to think. All right, let's take a look at the options one by one. Option A, competition exists among individuals. Is this an idea given by the natural selection? Yes, of course. Darwin suggested that all the species, they compete and then they struggle for existence. B, individual of a species shows variation. Yes, of course. There is variation existing among species. This is also given by Darwin about natural selection. All right, option C, individuals with favorable characters have a higher chance of producing offspring. Yes, this is also correct because they are better surviving and better reproducing to give offspring to continue their next generation. This is also an idea given by the natural selection from Darwin. So the options which is not involving the concept of natural selection is D. D is wrong. Let's take a look. It says that the favorable character developed it by individual in order to adapt to the environment can be passed to the offspring. This is wrong. First of all, the word choice, favorable character, developed it. This is already a wrong concept because when you say favorable character developed by somebody, you are referring to the acquired character. An acquired character, that means when you stretch your neck more, your neck become longer. This concept is given by Lamarck, but not Darwin. So therefore, D is not a concept involved in natural selection. It's a concept by Lamarck. Last MCQ, natural selection acts upon, it is selecting on characteristics of an organism, of the species. Therefore, it should be an organism's, immediately you should get the answer B. Because phenotype, that means the look or the character. Answer is B. At the end of this lesson, please go to your textbook page 9 to finish the MCQ number 1. That is the end of this lesson, the mechanism of evolution. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.